Today, we're diving into something that might be a little bit awkward for some guys to talk about. Penis size.
Yeah.
But hey, it's 2025. We got to be real about these things, right?
Anxiety about penis size is way more common than you might think,
It is.
even though most men are totally within the normal range.
That's absolutely right.
It's surprising how many men feel insecure even though they have nothing to worry about medically speaking.
Yeah, and it's like you hear all these stats, 55% of men are unhappy with their size, but 85% of their partners are actually satisfied with it.
Right.
So you kind of got to wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, you'd think those numbers would be flipped, right? That's why we wanted to have this deep dive today to really get to the bottom of this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And to help us navigate this topic, we've got a board-certified urologist with us today, an expert in male reproductive health.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's dive right in.
Let's do it. For all those guys out there wondering, am I normal? What is the average penis size? And when are we talking about something that's actually medically small?
Okay, so let's get right to the facts.
Yeah.
The average length is about 5.2 inches.
Okay.
The key takeaway here is that there's a huge range of what's considered normal.
Right.
We're talking bell curve people. Now, a truly small penis, medically, we call that a micropenis.
Well,
And that's less than 2.9 inches when flaccid.
okay.
And that's extremely rare, affecting less than 1% of men.
So less than 1% actually have a medical concern, but over half of men are stressing about it.
Right.
We have to think that maybe something's skewing their perceptions a little bit.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
One major factor is pornography.
of course.
Pornography often presents a very distorted view of what's typical.
You got to wonder if maybe those casting directors are working with a very specific subset of the population.
You know you're not wrong.
No judgment, but it's
Yeah.
not exactly real life.
Exactly. It sets up these unrealistic expectations, and that can fuel anxiety. And that's what we call small penis anxiety, which is a form of body dysmorphic disorder.
Body dysmorphic disorder.
Mm,
That sounds serious.
it is.
It's not just like guys being a little insecure.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It means you become so fixated on a perceived flaw that it starts to consume your thoughts and really affect your life. In this case, we're talking about penis size.
Oh,
We're
right.
talking constantly thinking about it, avoiding intimacy, even having suicidal thoughts in severe cases.
Wow. Okay, so this is not something to take lightly.
No.
If you're struggling with this, get professional help.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
A therapist can help you challenge those perceptions and develop healthy coping mechanisms.
So it's not just about the physical aspect, it's the mental and emotional impact too.
That's exactly right.
And speaking of treatment, there's a lot of interesting information floating around online about this.
For sure.
What's the biggest red flag guys should be looking out for when they're trying to find help?
For me, the biggest red flag is seeing treatments offered by people who aren't actually licensed or qualified.
Wow.
Or even worse, going abroad for some quick fix procedure. These situations often lack proper regulation and oversight, so you're basically taking a huge gamble with your health.
Yeah, so going for the easy route could actually backfire big time.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to stick with reputable sources. A qualified urologist or a psychologist who specializes in male sexual health, that's where you want to go for reliable information and treatment.
So let's talk about what those treatments actually look like. What are the main non-surgical approaches that men might consider?
Well, we can break it down into three main categories: psychological counseling, penile extenders, and penile injectable treatments.
Okay, let's go through those one by one. Starting with psychological counseling. Why is that usually the first line of defense?
Well, because it addresses the root cause of the problem, the anxiety itself,
Right.
by helping men understand what a normal penis size really is, and challenging those warped perceptions they might have picked up and giving them tools to manage their anxiety. Counseling can often make those urges for other interventions just disappear.
Okay, so it's about fixing the software, not just tinkering with the hardware.
Exactly. Now let's talk about penile extenders.
Okay.
These are devices that apply gentle, consistent traction to the penis over time. The idea is that this stretching can lead to a little extra length.
I've heard about these. People swear by them, but are they legit? What does the science say?
Studies have shown that yes, with consistent use, we're talking several hours a day for months, men can see an average gain of about 2 centimeters.
Okay. Couple of centimeters, not a bad deal.
Yeah.
But let's be real. It's not exactly a magic wand, is it?
No, definitely not a quick fix. It takes dedication and patience, and let's be honest, it can get a little uncomfortable.
Right.
And not everyone sees those results. And it's important to use the extender correctly to avoid any problems.
Okay.
So while extenders can help, it's not a miracle cure, and you absolutely need to talk to your doctor first.
So it's promising, but not a miracle cure.
Right.
What about those injectable treatments? Are those a safer, faster option?
Well, this is where I have to put on my cautious doctor hat and say, not recommended.
Okay.
We just don't have enough solid research to show that they actually work, and the risks are pretty serious. We're talking potential complications that could show up even decades later.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
something you want to mess around with.
No.
So we've covered the non-surgical options. What about surgery? We know it exists, but what's the reality of going under the knife for this?
Surgery for penile lengthening is a really complex and controversial area. There are various techniques, but they all come with serious risks and often don't deliver the results people are hoping for.
Okay, so not exactly a walk in the park.
Right.
In what situations would surgery even be considered a viable option?
Here's the bottom line. The only child-flighted context where surgery for this should even be considered is within a well-designed, IRB-approved clinical trial.
And for those of us who aren't doctors, what exactly is an IRB?
Good question. An IRB stands for Institutional Review Board. And they're like a watchdog for research that involves people. They make sure that the research is ethical and safe, and that the participants' rights and well-being are protected.
So taking part in a clinical trial means you've got this extra layer of protection and oversight.
Exactly. Clinical trials are the safest and most responsible way to explore new treatments, especially when we're talking about something as sensitive and potentially risky as penile lengthening surgery.
Got it. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from what's considered average to the anxieties some guys experience to the non-surgical and surgical options.
Right. And it's important to remember that these clinical trials are not just willy-nilly experiments.
Yeah.
They have really strict protocols and monitoring systems in place to minimize risks and to gather that reliable data.
So no bad scientists running around in lab coats?
Definitely not. That's why for anyone considering any type of treatment, the very first step is talking to a qualified professional.
Get that expert opinion before you make any decisions.
Absolutely. They can really assess your individual situation, give you accurate information, and help you make choices that prioritize your health and well-being.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we've learned so far. It seems like this whole pursuit of penile lengthening can be a bit of a minefield, with all sorts of misinformation out there.
You said it. It's so crucial to separate fact from fiction and make your decisions based on evidence, not hype.
So for our listeners who might be feeling anxious or insecure about their size, what are the key takeaways they should remember?
First and foremost, remember that there's a huge range of what's normal.
Yeah.
If you're really concerned, talk to a healthcare professional. They can give you accurate information and address any underlying anxiety.
Don't let embarrassment stop you from getting the help you need.
Exactly. And if you're considering treatment, remember that permanent change in penile length is tough to achieve. There are no guarantees.
We've gone over a few options, but it sounds like there's no magic bullet.
Right. Non-surgical options like those extenders we talked about, they might give you modest results with consistent use, but they're not for everyone.
And surgery.
Surgery is a drastic step with its own set of risks best left for carefully controlled clinical trials.
So no quick fixes. Don't fall for those marketing schemes that promise amazing results.
Exactly. Your health is too precious to risk on something unproven.
So where does all this leave us? What's the main message we want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the most empowering message is this. Focus on building self-esteem and embrace your body as it is. True confidence comes from within, not from some external factor like penis size.
I love that. It's about shifting our focus from anxiety and insecurity to self-acceptance and body positivity.
Exactly. And if you're struggling with body image, remember you are not alone. Seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are resources out there, people who care, and they want to help.
Such an important message. Now, we've talked a lot about individual experiences and treatment options, but I think it's important to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture here.
I agree. This topic brings up some really interesting questions about societal norms and pressures.
Like how much of our perception of normal is actually shaped by media pornography and cultural expectations.
Exactly. We're constantly bombarded with these images and messages that can really distort our views of ourselves and our bodies.
And those messages can be particularly harmful when it comes to something as personal and sensitive as penis size.
Absolutely. They can fuel anxiety, insecurity, and even lead to some risky behavior.
Yeah.
It's crucial to be critical of those messages and to challenge those unrealistic portrayals of male bodies.
So what can we do to push back against those often unrealistic norms and promote a more positive and inclusive view of body image?
Well, I think conversations like this are a great start.
Yeah.
By talking openly about these issues, sharing accurate information, and challenging those unrealistic expectations, we can help create a more supportive and accepting environment for everyone.
It's about shifting the conversation from shame and secrecy to openness and acceptance.
Exactly. And it's about empowering individuals to feel comfortable and confident in their own bodies, regardless of size or shape.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
I'm all ears.
How much of our perception of normal is actually constructed by outside forces, and what can we do to reclaim our own definitions of beauty and self-worth?
That's a fantastic question. It challenges us to really think critically about those messages we're receiving and to define our own values and standards.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true beauty and confidence come from within, not from conforming to some external pressure.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a really powerful message to end on.
Agreed. And remember, if you're struggling with body image concerns, don't hesitate to reach out for help. You don't have to go through this alone. There are resources available and people who care.
Seeking support is a sign of strength and self-care. Never forget that.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the complexities of penile length. We hope you found it informative and empowering.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing your unique and wonderful selves.
It's worth mentioning that those clinical trials, they involve meticulous planning and monitoring.
Right.
Everything's done safely and ethically. It's not reckless experimentation at all.
Yeah, more like a super controlled environment where they're really, dotting their I's and crossing their T's.
Exactly. And that's why for anyone even thinking about treatment, the first step should always be a conversation with a qualified professional.
Yeah, getting that expert opinion before you make any decisions.
Absolutely. They can really assess your individual situation, give you the right information, and help you make choices that put your health and well-being first.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned so far. It seems like this whole quest for penile lengthening can be
It's tricky.
Yeah, tricky to navigate.
It is.
Lots of misinformation out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So for our listeners who might be feeling anxious or insecure about their size, what are the key things to remember?
Well, first and foremost, just remember that normal covers a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
If you're concerned, talk to a healthcare professional. They'll be able to give you accurate information and address any anxiety you might be feeling.
Don't let embarrassment keep you from getting the help you need.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you're thinking about treatment, keep in mind that permanent change in penile length is tough to achieve. There are no quick fixes or guarantees.
Yeah, we've talked about several options today, and it sounds like there's no magic bullet.
That's the truth. Non-surgical options like those extenders we talked about, they might give you some modest results with consistent use, but they're not for everyone.
Right. What about surgery?
Surgery is a drastic step with a whole set of risks. Really, it should only be considered in carefully controlled clinical trials.
Okay, so no quick fixes. Don't be swayed by those, marketing ploys that promise amazing results.
No. Your health is too important to risk on something unproven.
So where does this all leave us? What's the main message we want our listeners to walk away with after this deep dive?
I think the most empowering message is this. Focus on building self-esteem and embrace your body as it is. True confidence comes from within, not from something like penis size.
Right. It's about shifting the focus from anxiety and insecurity to self-acceptance and body positivity.
Exactly. And remember, if you're struggling with body image, you are not alone. Seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are resources and people who care and want to help.
It's such an important message. Now, we've talked a lot about individual experiences and treatment options, but I think it's also important to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture.
I agree. This topic brings up some really interesting questions about societal norms and pressures.
Yeah, like how much of what we consider normal is actually shaped by the media, pornography, cultural expectations. Makes you wonder.
Absolutely. We're bombarded with these images and messages that can distort our perceptions of ourselves and our bodies.
And those messages can be especially harmful when it comes to something as personal as penis size.
You're right. They can fuel anxiety, insecurity, even lead to risky behaviors. It's so important to be critical of those messages and challenge the unrealistic portrayals of male bodies we see everywhere.
So what can we do to push back against those often unrealistic norms and promote a more positive and inclusive view of body image?
Well, I think open and honest conversations like the one we're having right now are a great start.
Yeah.
By talking about these issues, sharing accurate information, challenging those unrealistic expectations, we can create a more supportive and accepting environment for everyone.
It's about changing the conversation from shame and secrecy to
Yeah.
openness and acceptance.
Exactly. And it's about empowering individuals to feel comfortable and confident in their own bodies, regardless of size or shape.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
Get me with it.
How much of our perception of normal is actually constructed by, external forces? What can we do to reclaim our own definitions of beauty and self-worth?
That's a great question. It really challenges us to think critically about the messages we're constantly bombarded with and define our own values and standards.
It's about recognizing that true beauty and confidence come from within, not from trying to fit into some, arbitrary mold.
Couldn't agree more. That's a powerful message to end on.
I think so too. And remember, to all our listeners, if you're struggling with body image concerns, don't hesitate to reach out for help. You don't have to go through this alone. There are resources available and people who care.
Absolutely. Seeking support is a sign of strength and self-care. Never forget that.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the complexities of penile length. We hope you found this conversation informative and empowering.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing your unique and wonderful selves. It feels like we're really starting to change how we think about these things.
Yeah, it's like we're finally challenging those old, outdated norms.
Right.
And starting to embrace a more diverse and accepting view of what normal even means.
And that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about time we ditch those narrow definitions and recognize that beauty and self-worth come in all shapes and sizes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to kind of chew on.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've talked a lot about external pressures and societal expectations, But how do we reclaim our own definitions of beauty and self-worth? How do we break free from all that and find that inner confidence?
That's the million-dollar question. It takes real soul-searching and a willingness to challenge the messages we've been given our whole lives.
It's like we almost have to unlearn all those unrealistic expectations and start embracing our true selves.
Exactly. It's recognizing that true confidence and self-acceptance come from within, not from trying to fit into some, arbitrary mold.
And that's a journey worth taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about finding that self-love and that acceptance no matter what society might be telling us.
You got it.
And, on that note, I want to remind our listeners that if you are struggling with body image concerns, you don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah.
There are resources available. There are people who care and want to help. Seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Well said. It's a good reminder that self-care and self-love are really essential parts of living a happy, fulfilling life.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the complexities of penile length. We hope this conversation's been informative and empowering for you.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing your unique and wonderful self.